Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're excited to have you here with us today. I'm just going to give you some introductions for our speakers for the day. First up, we have Jennifer Donison, and she has expertise in a number of divorce-related disciplines. She is an accredited family mediator, an accredited divorce coach, a parenting coordinator. She's the vice president of our DCAO. She is also the director of Break Forward Divorce Coach Institute, and she is also the co-creator of Separation Preparation. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you
Thank
for being
you,
with us
Taya.
today.
I was wondering what you were going to say. I was like, oh, tell me more.
You are so qualified to be here today.
Thanks,
Next
Taya.
up, we have Heather Tannenbaum, who's also very qualified to be here today. Heather is an accredited divorce coach, a certified co-parenting and mediation prep coach at Reconstructing Happy. She's also a DCAO board member, and she educates future divorce coaches with DCA, which is the Divorce Coaches Academy. So thank you for being here today, Heather.
Thank you so much.
And just as a quick aside, I'm Taya Morrow, your mediator for today. I'm also a professional divorce coach and a board member with DCAO. And with that, I will turn it over to Heather and Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Taya. So introductions need not be done because Taya did such a great job. So I'll just dive right in. So today's topic is core skills used in divorce coaching. And divorce coaching is unique because we often meet people at the most difficult and uncertain time of their lives. The late, great Phil Epstein once said that we have to understand that anyone who walks through our doors is suffering temporary insanity. And he didn't intend for that to be disrespectful. He intended that to actually show the impact of what divorce does to a person in all aspects of their life. So coaching helps clients kind of slow things down, identify what matters most, understand their choices, prepare for difficult conversations, and move forward with greater clarity and confidence. Jennifer, what are your thoughts on the role of a divorce coach and what stands out to you?
So much. But for me, Heather, one of the most important things is remembering that clients often come to us feeling as though their lives are being controlled by circumstances and that they may feel that their former spouse is controlling everything, the process, everything. They may feel that lawyers, mediators, court dates, or financial issues are controlled and are controlling what happens next. And sometimes they simply feel overwhelmed by the number of decisions that they have to make. Coaching can help return a sense of agency to the client. We can't control the former spouse. We can't control what happens in court. We can't control every outcome. But we can help clients identify what they can control, how they communicate, how they prepare, what information they gather, what boundaries they establish, how they respond to conflict, and what decisions they make. And that shift can be incredibly powerful.
I love the word powerful. And today we're going to focus on several skills that are particularly important in divorce coaching. So, those skills, we've narrowed them down to active listening and effective communication, powerful questioning, goal setting and action planning, emotional validation, client empowerment, conflict management, helping clients make informed decisions, and building resilience. So, throughout our discussion, we're not only going to look at what these skills are, but we're actually going to attempt to sound like how they would sound in a coaching conversation. So, before we begin, we want to make an important distinction. Coaches should always work within the scope of their professional role. And this is something that's very important to both Jennifer and I, and hopefully to anyone who's participating in this call. The last webinar series put on by DCAO was actually dealing with ethics and divorce coaching. So I would encourage anyone with questions about the ethical responsibilities of a divorce coach to kind of check that out on our website, which is dcao.ca. So, Jennifer, without further ado, do you want to start talking about active listening and effective communication?
Sure. And, active listening may sound simple. It's just listening. And it is one of the more simple ones when you're speaking about it because literally you can listen to anyone at any time. But active listening is very different from simply hearing someone speak. And when clients first come to divorce coaching, they often have a lot to say. Sometimes not, sometimes they're more quiet, but some clients come to you and they just want to tell you everything that happened. And sometimes they've told the same story to different friends and relatives, lawyers, even different professionals. But other times, they've not truly felt heard by anyone. And you're the first person that they're just telling everything to. So, an effective divorce coach listens not only for the facts of the story and doesn't try to make them feel that whatever they're saying is true or untrue, but they want to listen for what's underneath what they're saying. So, what is the client afraid of? What keeps coming up repeatedly? What seems most important to them? Where are they getting stuck? What assumptions are they making? And what may the client actually need right now?
Right. And one of the biggest mistakes that we can make as coaches is listening while we're at the same time trying to prepare our response. And I'm not going to lie, I was kind of doing that now. When Jennifer, you're talking, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. And in this forum, it may be more okay, not completely okay. But when we're coaching, that means that we're actually not active listening. Okay. We hear the client speaking and our brain is already thinking, oh, I know what I should do. Here's the path I'm going to take. No, instead, we want to stay in that curious space. We want to imagine. So, like, imagine a client saying, for example, my ex never listens to me. Every time I send him a message about the children, he turns it into an argument and I'm exhausted. A coach could immediately respond with advice. But what we might say is, what I'm hearing is that the communication itself has become exhausting for you. Or it sounds as though you're trying to communicate about the children, but the conversation moves into conflict. Those responses demonstrate that we're actually hearing the client.
That's so important. And I love the examples that you gave because it's very difficult to really pinpoint what anyone's going through, but we hear a lot of
Mhm.
the same things over and over again. And, active listening also involves noticing the language. So I don't know about you, Heather, but I often hear clients use words like always,
Mhm.
never, impossible, or every time. Those words can give us important clues. So, for example, my ex always ruins everything. A coach might say, when you say always, what situations are coming to mind? So suddenly the conversation becomes more specific. And once we move from a broad emotional statement to a specific situation, the client may be able to begin solving the actual problem.
Mhm. And it's so true. But another important communication skill that coaches learn to have is the skill of summarizing. So after clients described a complicated situation for 5 or 10 minutes, we might say, okay, let me make sure I understand. Your main concerns seem to be the parenting schedule, how the last minute changes are being communicated, how those changes are affecting the children. Have I captured that correctly? So that does two things. So the first thing it does is it demonstrates that we were actually listening and they feel heard. But secondly, it helps organize what may feel chaotic in the client's mind. And sometimes the client will say, actually, the schedule isn't really the biggest issue. It's that I feel I have no say. So now we've identified something much more important.
So, Heather, I think we spoke a little bit about active listening. And what about powerful questioning techniques?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the most valuable things a coach can learn is how to ask a question that helps a client kind of think about things a little differently. So, powerful coaching question is usually open-ended,
Hmm.
non-judgmental, and forward focused. So, instead of asking, for example, did you tell your ex that? We might say, what would you like your former partner or what would you like your ex to understand here? Or instead of, why did you agree to that? We might say, what was influencing your decision at the time? That difference matters. Okay, why did you do that? Can actually seem accusational and can actually come off as judgmental. And when your client is going through the situation they're going through, that is the last thing they need from their coach who's supposed to be in the corner. So, what was influencing your decision invites reflection.
Hmm. I love that. And something that you said is so powerful. The coach is supposed to be in their corner. And it's so true. And that doesn't mean that we have to agree with what they're thinking and what they're doing. It just means that they have to feel supported by us. And, we also want to avoid leading questions. So a leading question might sound like, don't you think you should stop responding to those messages? That isn't really a question. It's advice disguised as a question. A coaching question would be more like, what happens when you respond immediately? And then what might happen if you gave yourself some time before responding? So now the client's evaluating their own behavior and trying to figure out what may work best for them in their situation.
And that's exactly the outcome we're trying to achieve, right? To get them to self reflect. And that's part of the clarity and confidence that comes from the coaching practice. Another question I really like is, what outcome are you hoping for? That question can actually completely change the conversation. Imagine a client who wants to send a 5 paragraph angry email to their former spouse. We've all had these clients. Before discussing the wording, we might ask, what outcome are you hoping for from this email? What do you think that might achieve?
Mhm.
Maybe the client says, I want him to understand how angry I am. And that's useful information because that can lead us to our next question, where we can then ask, and if he understands that you're angry, what would what would you like him to do differently? The client might realize that, oh, I actually want him to confirm the pickup for Saturday. Well, now our coaching conversation changes to the actual matter, and it's more likely to produce the outcome that they actually want.
Hmm. Yeah. And some other powerful questions coaches might use and include in the way that they speak to their clients is what's within your control? I love that one because
Mhm.
there's so many people who think that they have control over what their former partner does and says and reacts, and they don't. And I think a coach really needs to remind them of those type of things. Another question would be something along the lines of, what would a successful outcome look like for you? So if
Mhm.
they're writing an email or they're going to call their ex-partner with the intent of they don't know, they're just going to call because they're angry about something, what is it that they want from that? Do they want an apology? Do they want validation? Do they want things that are out of their control and they need to acknowledge that? How about what matters most to you here? Getting them to understand what it is that actually matters to them and why they're doing what they're doing. Having accountability for their actions and really recognizing what they're doing. What information are you missing? So maybe trying to put in perspective for them what it is that they actually are looking for so that they can fill in the gaps for themselves before they're trying to just start more additional conflict. Another one is what boundary might help you. I love that one because there's so many people who don't even know what a boundary is and what a
Mhm.
boundary, what the importance of a boundary is. And one of the things that I discuss a lot in our coaching program is how important boundaries are and what types of specific boundaries may be important for specific types of situations.
Mhm.
Also, what would make the situation feel even 10% more manageable? Divorce sucks. Separation is hard. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
hard for different reasons. Sometimes you're the one who may have initiated the separation or the one who has been told that the other person wants to leave, and there's all different feelings from different areas. And you're not going to make everyone feel better, and you're likely not going to make anyone feel completely better. So, how can you figure out with them how they can gain that accountability and make things even 10% more manageable so that they aren't feeling as overwhelmed? Having them focus on that can alone be helpful. And one of the favorite questions, or one of my favorite questions that I always like to put into perspective for clients is, what would you advise a friend in the same situation?
Mhm.
Because sometimes there's so much emotion that people aren't able to see what is actually going on and they don't think practically. It's overtaken by emotion. So, what is it that you would tell someone that you care about and you're looking outside of the situation and you're looking in, what would you tell them in the same situation? Because then they start to look at things differently at times. And it doesn't always work. And there's going to be certain questions that are going to resonate more with some clients than the others. But getting to know your client, what resonates with them, what you feel they're clicking with is always such an important way for you to design the way that you're going to be discussing things with them. And we don't have to solve the entire problem. Sometimes helping a client identify the next manageable step is enough.
Absolutely, which actually takes us really smoothly into our next objective, which is talking about goal setting and action planning. So
Hmm.
you want to start with that one, Jennifer?
Sure. Um, Clients going through separation or divorce often come into a session with multiple issues competing for attention. And when I say that, they don't know what it is that's most important for them. And they may say something like, I need to deal with the house. My lawyer needs documents. My ex wants to change weekends. My daughter's upset and doesn't want to go. I don't understand our finances. I haven't slept. I haven't even eaten in days. Everything feels urgent. Part of our role is helping the client separate the issues and identify the priorities. What comes first?
That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is. And we can
little
always
manageable
also,
steps.
yeah. And we can also ask things like, if we could make meaningful progress on one issue during today's session, what would make the biggest difference for you?
Right.
And I find that that immediately gives your session direction and
Hmm.
focus because the
Yeah.
key is finding the focus. So, for example, the problem might be I'm completely overwhelmed by my lawyer asking me for all these documents. But the goal might become by the end of the day, I want to know the documents I need to gather and have a plan to get them together.
Hmm.
Okay. Now we have something concrete to focus our session on.
Right. And then we break down that goal. Who needs
Hmm.
to be contacted? What information needs to be obtained? What can be completed today? What needs professional advice? We don't give advice as coaches. We help clarify things that the client is going through and what they're needing to consider, but we don't give them advice. So, what professional advice, whether it be a lawyer or a financial specialist, what is it that we can do right now to compartmentalize and bring to them, which is very helpful? What's the deadline? What's the first step? This is especially important when clients are emotionally overwhelmed, like I just spoke about, because executive functioning can become more difficult under stress. And a task that might ordinarily seem simple can suddenly feel enormous. So instead of saying, get your financial disclosure together, which anyone who's dealt with a financial disclosure knows that it's super stressful and it's very overwhelming, and people automatically feel like they want, if they don't have financial background or experience, they feel like just throwing the papers away and not even looking at it because it's just too overwhelming. We might help a client create 3 manageable actions, for example. So tonight, locate the most recent bank and credit card statements. Just that's the only thing you have to do. Tomorrow, contact the accountant for the missing tax documents. Okay, so now they have an actionable plan. Friday, organize everything into folders for the lawyer. And if you need assistance, we can sit down together. That can transform an overwhelming task like a financial disclosure into something achievable and manageable for the client.
So true. If you break it off into manageable chunks, it makes it a lot less overwhelming.
Mhm.
Accountability is also another important coaching tool. At the end of a session, we might ask, what are you committing to do before we speak again? Or what actionable items are you committing to? Okay. And what could prevent you from doing it? So there you're forcing your client now to start thinking about what their challenges might be. And it's a built-in checks and balances system to overcome that challenge before it becomes one.
Mhm.
We want our clients leaving sessions not only feeling better, but knowing what they have to do for the next session. It keeps them forward focused. And on that, we can move to the emotional validation and client empowerment, unless you have anything else you want to add here, Jennifer.
No, I think you said that perfectly.
Okay, well, thank you.
I mean, we could talk about this for days and days, and there's so much more that
Right?
goes into each little aspect of it. But for an overall, it's just important to know that coaching is so much more than even these core skills that we're discussing today. There's just so much that goes into it. And I think it's really important for people to continue to explore what it is that they really want to understand to be able to help people, because this is such an important role, as you and I, Heather, both know.
Agreed. And so now we can get into the area that requires a greater deal of skill and sensitivity when we're talking about emotional validation. So, divorce is emotional. There's no two ways about it. Jennifer, you summed it up earlier when you said divorce sucks. Even
Yes.
when someone initiates a separation, as you alluded to, they still experience feelings like grief, anger, guilt, fear, uncertainty. A lot of the same emotions are felt, whether you initiated or you were told, as you mentioned earlier. So, as coaches, we don't need to fix those emotions. We're not here as fixers. We certainly don't need to agree with every conclusion that the client reaches either. But what we can do is we can acknowledge their emotional experience. So, for example, it makes sense that this feels overwhelming to you or sounds incredibly frustrating. You were expecting one outcome and something very different happened. Those statements communicate to your client that you see and you feel what they're experiencing. You are essentially validating it.
hmm And there's such an important difference between validating an emotion and a harmful interpretation, and validating a harmful interpretation. Because if a client says, my ex changed the schedule because she's trying to destroy my relationship with my children, we don't necessarily respond, yes, that's exactly what she's doing. Obviously, that's going to create some empowerment for the client to keep on going down that very destructive road. Instead, we may want to say something along the lines of, you're worried that these schedule changes could affect your relationship with your children. We have validated the concern this way without reinforcing an assumption about the former spouse's motives. That distinction is extremely important, and to keep asking yourself as you're going along with your client in your sessions to make sure that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and adding fuel to the fire, like you said, that's the friend's job to do over a glass of wine, not the coach's.
Which is also extremely dangerous, yes.
Right. And so I think that leads into empowerment, right? But healthy empowerment. So empowerment follows validation. And so a client might say something like, oh, I can't deal with him anymore. And instead of saying to your client, well, you have to be stronger, we might ask, what part of dealing with them feels the hardest right now? And perhaps they might say, when he sends me a hostile text, I panic and I can't respond immediately and I feel sick for the rest of the day. Well, now there's a coachable thing there for us. There's a nugget that we can grab onto and coach. So we might explore a communication boundary. So could the client wait before responding? Could they respond only to the parenting issue rather than the emotional content? Could certain communication happen through email or a parenting platform app? I'm a big advocate for co-parenting apps. But the coach is now, our job is helping that client develop the tools rather than becoming the tool for the client to depend on.
Oh, that last point is essential. Our ultimate goal should not be to make the clients dependent on their coach. The
Mhm.
coach is to help clients develop greater confidence in their own decision making.
Mhm.
Over time, we want the client to begin asking themselves the questions that we used to ask them. What do I actually need here? What is within my control? Does this response move me closer to my goal? Is this something that I need to answer now? Can this wait? That is empowerment.
It's so true. And we don't want to be, our role as a coach is not to be a crutch, but to be a launching pad.
hmm So let's talk about conflict. Conflict management skills is such an important part of what we do as divorce coaches, because we all hope for the clients that are going to be amicable and everything's going to be rosy and they're just going to want the same things and have the same goals, but it doesn't always happen that way. I mean, sometimes you find unicorns, and mostly it's difficult while people are trying to manage this transition. Many divorce coaching clients are dealing with reoccurring conflict, particularly around parenting, finances, and communication. Those are usually the big ones. And one of the first things we can help clients understand is that not every communication requires a response. And I kind of touched on that a little bit before when I said, do I need to respond right now? And not every disagreement requires resolution in that moment.
And not every disagreement has resolution.
Exactly.
But a useful coaching technique is helping our clients distinguish between the issue and the emotional invitation. So imagine a message like, ugh, you're unbelievable. Once again, you completely ignored what we're discussing. You obviously don't care about anyone but yourself, and you're picking up the kids at 6, or you're not. Are you picking them up or are you not? Like these are conversations that we've probably had in our personal lives, and these are certainly conversations that we've been privy to through our clients. But there's a lot in that message. But the practical issue is simply this. Are you picking up the kids at 6 o'clock? The client may want to respond to every accusation feeling that it's a personal attack. Oh, I'm not unbelievable. He's unbelievable. I did listen. You're the selfish one. And on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
This is,
really,
yeah,
yeah, all you want to know is,
it's
are
where
you picking up the kids at 6? That's it.
yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes there's so many other little digs that people will want to throw in there just because of their emotional state. And this is where we can help clients become more intentional. So before sending a difficult communication, I like clients to consider three things, sometimes more than three things, but for now we'll stick with three things. Is it necessary? Is it relevant? And does it move the situation forward? Sometimes people just want to write something to air other things out. But what they really need to focus on is the validity of why they are sending the message to control the conflict and to control unnecessary escalation of conflict. And if the answer is no, the message may not need to be sent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can also help our clients prepare for any difficult discussions, right? For example, before a parenting discussion, we might ask them, what are 2 issues that you really need to address in this conversation? What's important to you? What might trigger you during this conversation? So again, we're helping them anticipate the emotional triggers and manage their emotions prior to them actually happening. And that perhaps that preparation can significantly change how a client shows up for the conversation. And
Mhm.
by the way, these aren't just with parenting issues. These are difficult conversations you have to have with your lawyer. And it may not be about a high conflict situation. It might actually be that you're scared to speak to your lawyer. That creates a difficult situation.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so the preparation changes the interaction.
Absolutely. And I've seen many clients intimidated by their lawyers and have different thoughts about what a lawyer's role is. They feel like they need their lawyer to like them in order for them to be on their side, or they're afraid to say the wrong thing or to sound stupid when they're asking a question that may be completely relevant to their situation. So also encouraging them and helping them to understand what the relationship dynamic is and that their lawyer is advocating for them and on their side is also helpful to clarify. Clarifying different roles for the clients is always an important part of this when they don't know. Conflict management is not the same as conflict avoidance. And sometimes a client needs to have a difficult conversation. Sometimes they need to establish a boundary, which we discussed previously. Sometimes they just need to say no. Our role is to help them do that clearly and constructively. A boundary, for example, is not, you're not allowed to send me angry messages. We can't control whether another person sends an angry message. A more useful boundary might be, if a message contains insults or personal attacks, I will respond only to information that relates directly to the children. That is something the client can control.
And that's exactly the language that we're trying to encourage our clients to learn and to take to establish the co-parenting relationship and move it in forward focus area. So helping our clients make informed decisions is another core skill that divorce coaches have. So divorce involves a tremendous number of decisions. Should I keep the house? Should I sell the house? Can I afford to keep the house? Should I go back to work? Should I change jobs? Should I change my shifts around to accommodate the kids' schedule better? These are some questions that require legal, financial, and other professional advice. And that is not our role. That is way outside of our scope. But once the clients have the appropriate information, coaching can help them think through the decisions.
Hmm. There's so many decisions, like you said, and some of the decisions can be just like day-to-day decisions that no one really even talks about. And it's important for people to know that there are going to be decisions that they're going to have to make on the fly. And there's other things that do require more thought and time. And not everyone has to make a decision now. And not everyone can prolong decisions just because they're trying to either hurt the other person or stall something because they're not ready to move forward. There's just so many different decisions that go into this process. And one approach is to separate information from emotion.
Mm.
Suppose a client says, I'll never sell the family home. We could begin by exploring what the home represents. Maybe it represents stability. Maybe it represents security for the children. Maybe selling feels like admitting the marriage is over. Maybe the client genuinely believes keeping the home is financially advantageous. Those are very different issues, and finding out how to address them is going to be important.
100%. And we can also ask questions like, what does keeping the house mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then what information do you need before making that decision? Is it a realistic decision? And the client may need to speak with a mortgage professional, a lawyer, or a financial professional, and we can guide them in that direction as to who they can speak to and how to prepare for those meetings. The client, once they have that information, coaching can help them reflect on those options. And we can explore, okay, let's discuss what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? What matters most? What are the short-term and long-term consequences? What assumptions are you making? And what information still needs to be confirmed?
I love that you say, what assumptions are you making? There's so many assumptions in separation.
In
Sometimes,
life.
yeah, in life, for sure. Sometimes we help clients identify when they're making decisions from fear.
Mhm.
And that's a big one. That doesn't mean the fear is irrational, but it is useful to recognize when fear is driving the decision. So a coach may say, if fear were not making this decision for you, what other factors would you consider? And that can open up an entirely different perspective.
I love that. I love that.
So our final core skill that we're going to talk about today, because again, there's several, is helping clients build resilience and self-advocacy. Resilience doesn't mean pretending that divorce isn't difficult. It means developing the ability to navigate difficult circumstances without losing sight of yourself.
Easy enough, right?
Super easy. So easy.
What's the problem?
Just be happy.
How hard could that be? One way to build resilience, though, is by helping our clients notice their progress,
Mhm.
right? It's like when you don't notice your kids growing up because you see them every day until you don't.
Mhm.
Clients often focus exclusively on what is still going wrong. But as
Mhm.
coaches, we have the opportunity to get them to shift that perspective by asking things like, what did you handle differently this week? Right? And maybe the client says, you know what? My ex sent a terrible message, and normally I would have answered right away. This time I waited 2 whole hours. I mean, that's progress. That's what we want, and that's what we want to draw their attention to because it shifts their mindset into seeing what the progress is, and that encourages them to keep doing it. We want that recognition for them. So the client begins seeing, oh, I can do this. I did handle that differently.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about what you're saying because I'm actively listening. And one of the things that I love that you're talking about is how even the smallest changes can make somebody feel that there's progress in a situation where they feel that they're so stagnant and nothing is moving forward quickly. So that's a really important one. Self-advocacy is equally important.
Mhm.
A client who is overwhelmed by professionals may sit in a meeting with a lawyer or a mediator, nod along, leaving the meeting later, realizing they understood very little. I don't
Mhm.
know about you, Heather, but there's so many times I sit in with clients and counsel, or I
Mhm.
attend a mediation session with a client and I'm in the other room with them, or whatever the case may be. And it sounds very simplistic, and the professional is doing an amazing job by explaining things. And I
Mhm.
think my client is totally understanding, they're nodding along, and after they're just like, what just happened? They're too overwhelmed and there's too much going on for them to really put things into perspective and understand. And that's really important for us to be there and to be paying attention and taking notes and being able to be their second set of eyes and ears so that sometimes we're able to explain things to them again.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we can help clients prepare in different ways. If they're going to be going to a lawyer meeting or into mediation or any other different professional setting, we can always say, what questions do you want answered? And we can identify what questions are appropriate for the legal professionals, what is appropriate for a mediator. We need them to understand how to use their time wisely so they're not going to be spending tons of money in a session when they really don't have to, because only half of their questions are appropriate for that professional. And maybe some of those other questions can be answered because they're practical things that we can help them with, especially if we know that we have to stay in our boundaries and not step on legal toes, which is super important for any divorce coach to understand and know. We can
Yeah.
ask them, what information don't you understand?
Mhm.
And sometimes that is, I don't know. And it's like, okay, no problem. So do you understand this? And what comes next? Sometimes that's all that we need. We need to ask them things like, what are your priorities? And helping them identify what their priorities may be if they don't know because there's just too much going on.
Yeah.
And what do you need clarified before agreeing to anything?
Mhm.
Heather, how many times have we seen people just agree to things because they just want it over because they're exhausted, or they just want to give up because it's just too much and they're just like, I just want this over with. Or sometimes,
That was my 9 a.m. meeting today.
oh, there you go. It happens all the time. Or
Yeah.
sometimes we see people who are just like, I'm not agreeing to that because I don't want them to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And there's different motives for it. So putting things in perspective and understanding what the priorities actually are helpful for the client to actually hear them and start to think about them and start to put them in order. What do you need clarified before agreeing to anything is one of the ones that I love the most because it gives an opportunity for clients to ask you any questions that they don't understand, even if they think it's a stupid question. We can even help a client create a short agenda before an important meeting, which I
Mhm.
often do. It's not giving legal advice. It's helping the client participate more effectively in their own process and what it is that's important to them.
100%. And again, it's not speaking to intelligence or business savvy or anything when a client just nods along and has no comprehension or absorption of any of the information. It speaks to the fact that the emotions are so powerful and override any ability to absorb information and retain it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
sometimes self-advocacy means becoming comfortable saying things like, I don't understand. Can you explain that again? Right? Showing your client there's no shame in asking for an explanation,
Mhm.
right? That comes with the confidence. Or, I need some time to consider this before making a decision, or I need to process all of this. This is a lot right now. Also, asking for breaks. If you're in a mediation session, sometimes self-advocacy can come in the form of just saying, I need to take 5 minutes, right? Or
Definitely.
I'd like to understand the alternatives. These are incredibly powerful tools in self-advocacy.
Hmm. Yep. Let's talk about case examples, Heather, and putting things together.
Sorry, I just had a distraction.
It's okay. You're not actively listening, I
Okay.
see.
So before we move into those questions, let's just put all of these skills together with a quick example if we can. Okay? Just indulge me. So imagine a client comes into a session and says, My ex wants to change our parenting schedule again. He does this constantly. My lawyer says we should try to work it out, but I'm sick and tired of giving in, and I'm going to tell him absolutely not. Jennifer, where might you start in a session?
Oh, well, thanks for throwing that on me.
No
Um,
problem.
I'd probably begin with listening and clarifying.
Hmm.
So I may say something along the lines of, you sound really frustrated that the schedule keeps changing, because that's something that obviously the client is experiencing.
Hmm.
And then I would ask, what is the specific change he's asking for? So now we're really making it something that is manageable, and it's not making it so extreme. It's just tunnel visioning it. And we're moving from emotion to the actual issue.
Okay. All right, I'll jump in because I did kind of throw that at you. So,
Yeah, thank you.
uh, teamwork. Okay. So then, maybe the client explains that, their former spouse wants to switch weekends because of like a family wedding, let's say. So now our questions change, right? So now we might ask, well, what concerns you about agreeing to that change? Guessing what the client might say. Every time I accommodate, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of and walked all over. Okay, well,
Mhm.
now we've actually identified the real issue, which isn't the wedding or the schedule change. It's the pattern and how the client experiences that pattern emotionally.
Absolutely. And this may be an appropriate time to move into goals. What outcomes would you like? The client may say, I want more predictability. Great. Now we can explore what could create more predictability going forward.
Hmm.
Maybe the client decides that they're willing to accommodate this particular request, but want future schedule change related requests made at least, for example, 7 days in advance before, except for emergencies.
Hmm. Yeah. And now, we've used emotional validation,
Hmm.
we've used active listening.
Hmm.
We've used questioning and goal setting, conflict management, decision making, and boundary setting.
Well, we're good,
So,
Heather.
right? Look at us. And perhaps most importantly, the coach does not decide whether the client should switch weekends, right? It's not our
Mhm.
decision,
That's
it's
right.
the client's decision. And now they have reached that decision through the clarity and confidence that they were able to achieve through the coaching session. And that, my friend, distinguishes and captures the essence of coaching. So,
Heather,
yay! Maybe we
yay.
can
But
take a
Heather,
few minutes.
I'm going to tell you that what you said is something that's so important and deserves to be like highlighted and bold and underlined. We don't want to be responsible for making decisions for somebody else's life. And the reason why, there's so many reasons why, but one of the most important ones is we don't want to be responsible for what those decisions are going to create. They need to be in charge of their lives. They need to be empowered. They need to know that their decisions are their own. And people who come looking for help from a divorce coach or other professionals sometimes want to put that responsibility onto the professional or the coach or
Mhm,
whoever it is that they're working with.
mhm,
And they'll say, what do I do?
mhm.
And really, if us as professionals will turn to them and say, this is what you should do, and something goes horribly wrong, who's responsible for that decision? We are.
Well, it's not even fair because we don't have to live with the consequences of the decision.
Absolutely not. And how easy is it to now turn to us and be the person that we're blaming for making a decision? So it's not even about not giving the client an answer because we don't know the answer or we don't know what looks like the right answer because we've seen it 1,000 times.
Mhm.
It's so important for coaches not to give advice and tell the client what to do so they have the ability to really be empowered by the decisions that they're making and take responsibility for whatever it is that's the result of that decision that they're making. I just wanted
Well,
to
that
highlight that.
that goes back to the crutch versus the springboard, right? We want to get, or the
Yes.
launching pad, right? We want to
Right.
give them that launching pad or that springboard. We don't want to be
Yeah.
the crutch. And
Right.
by them coming to us and saying, "Ugh, just tell me what to do,"
Hmm.
that's crutch.
Yeah. Absolutely. So as we wrap up,
Yeah,
we want to leave you with one important idea.
just one.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so, just for now. Divorce coaching is not about having the perfect answer. It's really not. It's about helping the client develop the understanding and confidence, like we just discussed. I'm going to make that my one important thing to
Yeah.
find their own way forward because I think that is the most important thing that we've discussed in today's session from my
Yeah,
perspective.
and so often the most powerful thing we can do is resist the urge to solve. Like a lot of
Mhm.
us get into this profession because we want to be fixers, right? We have compassion and maybe we're empathetic.
And maybe we've been
What
through it ourselves and we just,
maybe,
yeah, we think we know the answer because it happened in our situation.
right. But that's not what we want. Okay.
No.
We want to listen first, ask the next useful question, help the client to identify what they can control, what they can't, turn overwhelming problems into manageable steps,
Mhm.
validate their emotions without reinforcing conflict, encourage informed decision making, and
Mhm.
continually return ownership, like you just said in your example, to the process of the client.
Because ultimately, a successful coaching relationship helps someone move from, I don't know what to do, to, I understand my options, from, I can't handle this, to, I know what my next step is. And from, everyone else is controlling my life, to, I can advocate for myself and make thoughtful decisions about my future. And it's not only one sided where people are feeling completely confused and overwhelmed. There's a lot of people on the other side. So just helping everyone know that there's forward movement and ways to get there from wherever they are in their position is your responsibility as a coach to identify and to assist appropriately.
Yeah. And I think in closing, I mean, does anybody, on this chat have any questions? You're free to put them in, the Q&A in the chat. Taya can monitor that. And while you're doing that, maybe consider, this question for yourself. Which of these coaching skills do you think is the easiest to understand, but the hardest to actually practice? Because for many coaches, it's listening without immediately trying to jump in there and solve the problem. And for others, it's asking the powerful questions and allowing silence long enough for the client to really think about it. I'm also a mentor coach for aspiring divorce coaches, and I find that that's one of the biggest challenges they have. And I constantly have to tell them just sit in the silence. You don't have to fill the airspace.
Sometimes it's the hardest to do, you're right. And remember that these skills develop with practice. In my
Mhm.
divorce coach training program, Break Forward, we dive deep into many skills along with other considerations that coaches need to successfully help a client get through this difficult transition. And remember, the more coaching conversations you have, the more comfortable you become with silence, curiosity, reflection, and allowing the client to lead. You don't need to have every answer, and we just need to stress that. Sometimes the best thing that you can say is, what do you think you need right now?
hmm And we hope that today's discussion has given, you the practical tools so that you can begin using them in conversations immediately. And Jennifer, thanks for joining me. This was fun.
Riveting, Heather.
Riveting.
Riveting. And thank you, everyone else who's joined and everyone who's listening after this recording has now been released. And we love divorce coaching. And if anyone is interested in learning more, please contact us anytime.
I do have a couple of things as well to add, if you
Sure.
guys don't mind.
No, not at
I'm
all.
just going to share my screen. Hang on one second. So, how to get in touch with a DCAO divorce coach?
Yep. Super
You can
important.
go to dcao.ca/member directory, and you just have to click on a person's profile to see what their designation is. Some of these people are lawyers, some of them are divorce coaches, and then other affiliated members. So you just have to click on their name to see what their actual title is. How to become a DCAO member. Go to dcao.ca/how to join. So it would be over here, how to join membership. And then you just have to scroll down. This is just a screenshot, so I can't show you that. But you can select the appropriate category for accredited divorce coach, professional, apprentice, or affiliate member. We do have affiliate members, thank you, within our membership. So that's things like legal, realtor, or therapist. The next thing I had to mention is we've got some upcoming DCAO events in September, And September is a great month for our events. We've got another speaker series coming up like this one on September 16th at 11 a.m. And that's supporting clients through emotional and high conflict situations. This next one, the DCAO Divorce Summit. This is for people who are experiencing divorce, and we'll cover things like 5 financial moves to make before you say you want a divorce, what happens to the house. Court isn't your only option, so looking at the various processes available to people getting divorced in Ontario. We also will be touching on building the right divorce team, who you need and when. And then we've got this really special event coming up, DCAO Film Night. It's a series of events that we do every few months. This one's going to be a night of film and dialogue on intimate partner violence, and that is on September 28th, 2026. Obviously, Paradise Theatre, and that goes from 6 to 9 p.m. So if you're interested in any of these events, I encourage you to visit the events page on our DCAO website. And that's all I've got. So,
And Taya, isn't it right that the divorce coaching, film and dialogue that we usually run, so we've run two so far, they sell out quite quickly.
they do sell
So
out quite
we would
quickly.
encourage people, yeah, to go and get
If
their
you can get
tickets
your tickets
because,
as soon as possible. Yeah.
yeah,
And
And it
tickets
is
are
coming
very
up.
affordable.
they're very far. And it's what a
Yes.
great night. It's so
Yes,
much
actually, on that
inspiring.
note, they're $20 for DCAO members and $30 for non-members. So even if you're not a member of DCAO, you're welcome to come out and do cocktails and networking and participate in the discussion, the whole bit. So we're really excited about this one.
You had me at
Important
cocktail.
topic for sure.
Perfect.
I'll see you there.
Well, thank you so much, Taya, for hosting. Heather,
No
always a
problem.
pleasure. And everyone for listening, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.